Well, welcome everybody. Very glad that you are all here. We are just about to get going. So thank you for being patient. Hope you had a really short but sweet bio break. Maybe got some fresh air and got out into the sun. We hope that this has been an inspirational start to the conference for you. It was a really interesting opening session. The speaker, listening to Florence Fagan French Fagan, sorry, from Bread for the World. That was amazing and informative and inspirational. And listening to the board, I'm with the board and I still learn something new every time I get to hear them speak. And I always learn from the board. And that's what I know about Jim Masters, our next speaker. I've only been with Circles USA for 3 years. And every time I'm in the room with Jim, I learn something new. So I'm really excited for this upcoming session because there have been so many changes, especially politically, in 2021, and the American Rescue Plan Act has all different facets and features. So if there's any way for us to know what those are and learn how to leverage those, or what does that mean for our chapter or our circle leader families, or what does that mean for me personally, even if I'm not a circle leader, it might impact our allies and resource team members and our staff and our nonprofit. So I'm really excited to learn. I'm going to turn this over to Jim in just a moment. So let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. Obviously, this is being recorded. If you want the word scrolling on the bottom, click the live transcript button and you'll get auto-generated closed captions. And then if you do have questions, we'll try to do this the exact same way like we did the board panel discussion. I'll be watching as best I can in the chat, or if you hit the Q&A panel. And then when Jim comes to closure, we'll get at those questions as best as we can in the time allowed. So thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to pass it on to Jim. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Kamatari. Okay, give me a second to get this thing fired up here. Okay, the American Rescue Plan. Where's my slideshow from beginning? Here we go. It's trying to connect. There we go. Okay, so the American Rescue Plan, there are 3 or 4 things that I want you to remember about this as you are watching it. One is it's big. I first went to work, my first real job out of college was at the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity in the 1960s, the original war on poverty, where I went around and helped community action agencies get started up. And as we said at the time in the 60s, the Great Society, this is big. This is the biggest thing since New Deal. Well, looking at what has happened just on COVID relief, the COVID relief, the American Rescue Plan, the proposed infrastructure bill, this is big. This is the biggest thing that's happened, not only since the war on poverty in the 60s, but since the Great Depression and the New Deal in the 1930s. It has a lot of moving parts. Now, while this is all good news, there is an implementation lag in some dimensions of the American Rescue Plan. Because it has so many moving parts and is going through so many systems, it could take a while to get there. I want you to remember the rollout of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and how what was supposed to be the flick of a switch took weeks or months to really polish it up and get it out there. I want you to remember the conversation or the news stories about the California Department of Employment Development. I live in California, and how it took weeks or months for people who qualified for unemployment assistance to even get somebody on the phone. It turned out the California Employment Development Department was using computer systems from when they first came out in the 1980s. They loved them and they bought them and they're still using them, and they don't really work so well anymore. They were enormously understaffed for the demand that took place. So there are implementation issues that are going to vary on every one of these things. So the third thing I want you to remember as we go through this is that many of these provide tax benefits, cash benefits that end on September 30th of this year. So the hope, of course, on the part of the elected officials who supported the creation of this is that they will be able to convert these one-time benefits into permanent benefits, child care tax credits, child care centers, etc. Whether that will happen or not remains to be seen. So don't rebuild your life around this first set of benefits on the expectation that they're going to continue. They may or they may not continue. So salt some of this money away in case it doesn't happen. So let's see, how do I get myself out of the way here? Let me see if I can do this. So, oh, there we go. So this law passed on March 11, and it was brought about with the coronavirus pandemic and the need to rescue American society and the American economy from the pandemic and the negative effects this had on the economy. So it has substantial increased funding for public health programs, the safe reopening of schools, assistance to low-income and middle-class families, and financial support for states and small businesses. So the child care tax credit improvements increases the maximum child care tax credit from $2,000 to $3,000 per child. It's fully refundable. That means this doesn't really depend on the amount. You're going to get this if you are eligible for it. You don't have to reach some minimum threshold or maximum, et cetera. This is something that you are going to get if you are eligible for it. And you can get this refundable credit through what they call period payments. In other, you can have this come in, I guess, monthly or quarterly. However, these changes expire next January 1. So my advice, figure out how to get this and apply for it fast and salt some of this money away. So the earned income tax credit for people who are working and do have income, it expands it for taxpayers with no qualifying children. For many years, only people with children could qualify for this. Now you do not have to have qualifying children. It removes the minimum and maximum ages of 25 and 65. It increases the income at final credit phase out up to $21,000 a year. And it increases the amount of the maximum credit from $529 to $1,503. So it triples the amount of the credit. So even people who are with children but cannot provide ID requirements, meet ID requirements, it provides a tax credit for those children. And this is new, allows separated spouses to claim the credit if they are filing separately, providing that the person now claiming it lives with their qualifying child for more than half of a year and not living with the spouse, or they have a written separation agreement. And again, these changes expire January 1, 22. So these recovery rebates, this is the checks that many people have already started receiving. And you had $1,400 for an eligible individual. So the recovery rebates end December 31, 2021, at the end of this year. Now, why they had some of these things phase out December 31 or January 1 has more to do with what year they wanted to count the expenditure against than anything else. It's not particular programmatic sense. This is the Office of Management and Budget wanting to tote things up in a different way. So an individual who does not have a Social Security number or an individual tax ID number would not be eligible for these payments. So you remember when the President Trump first said, Congress said, let's give people $400. And President Trump said, no, let's give them $2,000. So they gave out the $400. And so here were the Democrats. Are we going to let former President Trump propose transfers of money to the American people that are greater than the amount we, the Democrats, would give? And they said, we don't think so. So they raised the amount of money going to people. Okay, so this is very important. The tax credit money that you get are not counted as assets for tax purposes or resources for a period of 12 months as far as determining eligibility for federal programs. I think they are not taxable as far as income either. So the child and dependent care tax credit. This is the one that is supposed to reduce child poverty by 50%. So it makes the tax credit fully refundable, i.e. you're going to get this amount no matter what. And it increases the maximum credit from $3,000 to $8,000. This is an incredible increase. I'm not quite sure what this means. Increases claimable percentage of employment-related expenses from 35 to 50%. It obviously means something, but I'm not quite sure what it is. This is why when we get to the end, I'm going to suggest the way that you figure this out. Okay, here's another one. The changes expire January 1, 2022. So you've got to go get this money soon in order to, you got to get it this year. That's the point. Okay, so here's pandemic emergency assistance, $1 billion in the form of grants to states. It isn't clear what this can be used for, but you remember there was a big debate in Congress. Shall we give money to states, counties, and cities or not? The opponents said these states, counties, and cities that have overspent their budgets and don't have enough revenue coming in, we're just bailing them out. And the supporters said, including testimony from many Republican governors and county officials, hey, we need this money too. We've got shortfalls just like the big cities do. We want Congress to pass this, so they did. Here's some new ones. This is not socially disadvantaged famers like entertainers. This is farmers and ranchers. They are going to do debt relief, especially for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. This is generally the family farmers, minority farmers, the non-corporate farmers who have taken on debt, and there is a debt relief provision here, which you get through the Department of Agriculture. So food programs extends the 15% increase in SNAP benefits through September 30. Now, that's only 4 months away. So, you've got to, presumably, this will happen automatically through the EBT system and doesn't require any particular act. Also, the increase in the WIP program, the cash voucher value, a cash value voucher goes up for $35 again through September 30, 2021. Housing, a lot of stuff going on in housing. Emergency rental assistance, $21.6 billion. Now, if I had read through the 781-page American Rescue Plan, I might know how it is you apply for this emergency rental assistance, but I don't. Maybe somebody who's watching this knows how this system is going to operate and can put it in the chat so that we can figure out who do you apply for to get this emergency rental assistance. But it can be spent on rent, back rent, utilities, and utility cost arrears, and other expenses related to housing as defined by the Treasury. Whether the Treasury has already done this or not, I don't know. If they have, because of the rental assistance provisions of the previous COVID bill, then this money presumably will move pretty quickly. If they haven't, that means the Treasury has got to define these circumstances. And as we know, the passage of regulations, they have to draft them, they have to publish them, they have to give people a chance to comment, then they have to adopt them. The regulatory development process can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. Hopefully, Treasury has already got something that they can count as a definition for this to move this money forward. Emergency tenant-based housing vouchers, $5 billion. I don't know what this is. Emergency assistance for rural housing, $100 million on rural rental assistance, $39 million in rural homeowner assistance. Housing counseling services, $100 million. Homeless assistance, $5 billion. This is for tenant-based rental assistance, affordable housing, supportable housing, and acquisition of non-congregant shelter units. Here in California, the state used their own money and they used COVID money to purchase motels. Some of them weren't doing too well. Some of them were kind of running down and needed some fixing up. But California moved a substantial percentage of people who were homeless into apartment units that they had purchased on the open market, and hopefully will continue providing that housing. Homeowner Assistance Fund, $10 billion. I don't know what kind of assistance they're going to provide, but in the past, HUD has provided fix-up and repair work. Sometimes it extends to installing new systems like solar. The LIHEAP program, let me move my picture so I can, $4.5 billion. I am assuming this is in addition to the regular appropriation, but this is a substantial increase, and it's available through September 30th of next year, 2022. A water program, $500 million. Now, this was largely brought about by the Flint, Michigan problems with lead pipes, and the chemicals they were using in the water caused the lead to leach out of the pipes and made the water undrinkable. It isn't clear to me yet whether this $500 million is for replacement of lead pipes, because that's also proposed in the infrastructure bill. So this may be something different from removal of lead pipes. Unemployment, okay, they've again extended the unemployment compensation through September 6th of this year, and extends the eligibility of workers who are self-employed individuals, people working in the gig economy. Again, these are temporary extensions. And again, at least in California, the Employment Development Department has not done a stunning job as far as implementing these provisions. Okay, education and childcare. Elementary, secondary school education relief fund, $125 billion, designed to help schools get open. The schools will figure out how to get this money, presumably through the Department of Education. And the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, focused in particular on smaller colleges and universities. Here's big. Broadband for remote learning, $7.2 billion. About 16% of people in America do not have internet access at home. Perhaps they have a cell phone, but they do not have internet access through a computer. And there's general recognition, I think supported by Republicans and Democrats alike, that we've got to get broadband into every home in America, not only for COVID education purposes, but also for education purposes. Here in Sonoma County, California, a fairly well-off county, we have many stories of the kids trying to do remote education here. If you've got 3 children in the home and they're all supposed to be in school at the same time, and you've got one computer, this is a problem, right? So the idea that we have to expand broadband access with their internet connections, and also provide devices that people can use, and also provide the training to help people learn how to do this. Some other countries, South Korea, Singapore, some of the Scandinavian countries are way ahead of the US as far as assuring that every person in the country has broadband access. So we've had some conversations about this at the National Community Action Partnership, the Trade Association of Community Action Agencies, and are very excited about this expansion of broadband. So for those people with student debts, there's things going on here that you, in the past, you've had to report student loan forgiveness as an income. And the Congress has said, no, you don't have to do that. Head Start, another $1 billion available through September 30, 2022. This is very interesting. I do a lot of work with the Head Start program. Head Start is challenged to spend the current appropriation because of the cut down. You know, a lot of the staff people who were in classrooms are not in the classrooms. A lot of the materials that they purchased for use in the classrooms are not being purchased. So here comes an additional $1 billion to go out. So this is big. The child care services, $24 billion for child care stabilization grants, $15 billion for the child care development block grant. So this is a significant amount of money going into child care services and providing the availability of child care services. And if you attended the previous workshop that the board did and heard Joan Kiriansky and others talk about the significance of child care for parents in general, and in particular for women, whether they're working from home or working in a place, we've just got to get our child care system built up and more effective than it has been in the past. France did this 20 years ago. Why can't America? So here it comes, dramatic amounts of money for child care services. This is a business opportunity. Start an in-home child care provider service. Start a child care center. There's going to be money for child care. Here it comes. Okay, vaccinations and testing. My opinion is COVID is the first, this is our practice run for pandemics. In my opinion, there are more pandemics coming. And now that science has the ability to detect them, to analyze them, to develop vaccines for them, to develop treatments for some people who are infected by the virus, I think that we're seeing our pandemic infrastructure expand dramatically, not only for COVID, but as I say, to put systems in place for future pandemics. There's a concept called One Health, interestingly enough, first financed through the World Bank, that looks at how viruses move around between animals and humans. The scientific field for this is called zoonoses, Z-O-O-N-O-S-E-S. Zoonoses are diseases common to humans and animals. One Health looks at those in the context of the rest of the environment and predicts an increase in the number of viruses crossing over and affecting humans. So the whole expansion of the system under COVID, I think, is going to result and turn into a permanent infrastructure for dealing with pandemics. Some specific things here: strengthen vaccine confidence through education, outreach, and improve vaccination rates. And then look at this: $47 billion for COVID-19 testing, tracing, and monitoring. Here we are, we hope, approaching the end of this particular pandemic. And here comes the amount of money that would have been extremely useful to have a year ago. But I guess better late than better late than never. Community health centers and community care. $7.6 billion for federally qualified health centers to respond to COVID-19, including paying back for past expenditures. They already got like $1 billion, I think, in the COVID bill, and here's another 7.76. So there are, maybe 1,400 federally qualified, what we call community health centers, and this, I think, appropriation about doubles the amount of money they have. 1.5 billion for community mental health services, block grants, which go through to community mental health centers. And then 420 million for grants to certified community behavioral health clinics. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between the community mental health services block grant and the grants to certified community behavioral health clinics. They will know soon if they don't know already. Okay, stuff for small business, the Paycheck Protection Programs for 7.3 billion, expands the eligibility to additional nonprofits. Make sure your sponsoring organization of your circles chapters is paying attention to this. It doesn't extend the current application period, which expired March 31, 2021. So this is a new wrinkle on the Paycheck Protection Program. I know that restaurants have been eligible, and there is now some expanded eligibility for restaurants, for the employees of restaurants, trying to keep the ship afloat until they can get back in. Economic injury disaster loan grants, $15 billion. I have no idea what that is. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund, $28.6 billion. So if you have anyone in your, if you or anyone in your family or friends have a restaurant that they've managed to hang on to through this pandemic, this looks like a shot in the arm to keep them afloat and tune them up for whatever needs to be done for expansion. We are, I think in Sonoma County here, we are at 50% of restaurant capacity. My wife and I went out for our anniversary dinner last Saturday night, the first time we've eaten indoors in a restaurant in a year. And we spent a good part of the dinner speculating about whether or not the restaurant was adhering to the 50% rule, or whether they maybe had just a few more people than that. Anyhow, things happening as we reopen. Okay, more state and local government. I mentioned the controversy in Congress about whether they should provide money to state and local governments. So here's $219 billion coming available through December 31, 2024. And then there's a local fiscal recovery fund of $130 billion. So metropolitan cities, counties, are in the local fiscal recovery fund. So we have two different funds here, one state and one's local. I don't know how these are going to be administered, but my guess is the states, counties, and cities will figure this one out. And what are they going to do with the money? Are they just trying to cover operating expenses? Are they going to try to invest this in some other kinds of system changes and improvements? I think all that remains to be seen. I don't know, and I'd bet money that they don't know yet either. Some places were hurt significantly more by the drop in sales tax revenue. However, here in California, the state actually experienced an increase in the revenue that comes from taxes on property sales. So it's just going to be state by state and city by city as to how much they were hurt in terms of revenue loss and how much they will use this money to backfill against revenue shortfalls, or how much this is going to turn out to be bonus money. We'll see. Okay, resources and credits. So here's the statute, all 781 pages of it. I'm hoping Kamatera can figure out, or Courtney can figure out a way to make this whole PowerPoint available to you, so that you can go up and look around there yourself. I want to give special thanks to Ryan Gelman, the public policy manager at the National Community Action Partnership, for writing the summary of the American Rescue Plan on which this PowerPoint is based. You can get this 10-page summary up on their website in the form of a PDF document. And then the question comes, how do we figure out how we get ours? How do we figure out how we access these many pots of money that supposedly are available? Well, certainly if they're coming to a local provider, your community mental health center, your community health center, they are going to be pursuing those funds, and you can ask them. For the individual transfers, the cash transfers, the tax credits, the tax benefits, I think, in my opinion, first of all, because of the complexity, because of the deadlines, because of how different agencies are going to treat this, you need to find people who can help you sort through this stuff. The Volunteer and Tax Assistance Program, the VITA program, which many nonprofits have volunteers that work. Most community action agencies have 10 to 100 volunteers helping them, or helping people fill out their income taxes. Many senior centers provide tax help as well. But figuring out how the Treasury Department and the Internal Revenue Service are going to deal with these provisions, in my opinion, requires some technical knowledge about their systems and their regulations. And one place to get help for it is the VITA program. Another place is find your local community action agency. They are going to be beneficiaries of some of this money themselves. And one of their jobs is to help people figure out how to navigate all these benefit programs and federal systems. So contact them. You put in your zip code here, I think, and you can find your local community action agency and contact them. Okay, so I'm going to stop share here, and I'm going to look at the Q&A and see if there's any of these questions I can answer.
Hey, Jim, that was
this is a great question. Can the money be spent on arrears rent that occurred before the pandemic? I do not know, but that is a fantastic question, because the way that landlords count arrears and report arrears, certainly anything from March of 2020, when the pandemic was declared, is going to be eligible for this. What if you didn't pay your rent in February of 2020? Does that tag on to the money? And I do not know the answer to that, but it's a fantastic question. Let's see what other good questions have been asked that I can't answer. Will states have the power to redirect these funds? My guess is, I think Bruce is correct about this. His understanding is that this stimulus money, it goes back to March 2020 and not before that. I think he's probably right about that, but I do not know the answer. Will states have the power to redirect these funds? My guess is yes, they will, to the extent that they have the power to redirect funds now. I think, there are many, traditionally, legislation builds in flexibility. You can, if you don't spend it for the purpose we appropriate, you can spend up to 10% of it for something else. You can transfer 15% of it from here to there. Okay, where am I? I'm still trying to work the Q&A here. The relief is wonderful, but how do you feel will affect us all financially in the 5+ years to come? In Pittsburgh, we're already seeing road tolls that will be placed on roadways that are historically never had a toll. So I think Scott made a point in our board discussion about COVID has really changed the way that work is going to be done. And I think it's changed the way that people are going to earn income. I think a substantial number of people working from home are going to continue to work from home, either full-time or part-time. I think that people, we've seen this trend for the last 20 years. I've got 3 jobs, each of them a part-time job. I think that is going to continue. Will these tax benefits continue? Many of us hope that the child care tax credit, the child care funding will become permanent features of the American economy as they are in many other advanced industrial democracies. We want to see these things continue. If the politics are such that they are able to continue in 5 years from now, you'll continue to get a child care tax credit, a child tax credit, provide child care. We hope that these temporary things become permanent features of American life. Yes, the tax credit increased from $3,000 to $8,000. Again, the extent to which you are eligible for that, there are some tricky exemptions and exceptions. I see one question here in the chat about assistance available to family where the adults are undocumented, but minor children are citizens. I would say the answer to that is yes. But that's Jim saying that. I don't know what Congress said, but I think it's highly likely that they. Oh, I see. Okay. Kamatara has got the answer on what is this increase from 35 to 50% of your office supplies, et cetera. You can deduct a portion of that stuff. I guess the limit was 35%. Now you can deduct 50%. So that means that shelters income. How to apply for the emergency rental assistance. I do not know the answer to that, but I am Carla Marie from Utah. She put something in here. Carla, is that the place you apply for rental assistance in Utah?
Jim, for that portion of the chat was amazing. All different people put in all different links, like here's what Michigan does, here's what Utah does, here's what we do. So great. I was thrilled to see all y'all are already on top of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe scooch down just a little bit more for a few more questions.
Okay, this is you are doing exactly the right thing. Don't wait to get the letter in the mail or for somebody to call you up. This is get out there and dig. Call everybody you know. How do I do this? What's the system? What's the procedure? What documentation do I need? So on and so forth. Go for it. I think in many cases, the agencies themselves don't know. Like I said, in some cases, they've got to write regulations for these. And if they have to write regulations in order to implement a piece of this, let's step back. Hopefully the regulations are already in place and we're just expanding and you can use the current system, whatever that is. If they have to write new regulations to implement a piece of this, as they may well have, for example, for the money for state or local governments, that is a minimum, a 2-month process. Now, there are some emergency provisions, et cetera, that might shave a week or 2 off of it, but you still are, okay. Okay, so the Fayette County Community Action Agency has ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance Program, in their housing department. Hopefully, this rental assistance money goes through the existing emergency rental assistance programs and just expands them, and is not some brand new kind of deal. In Michigan, in Utah, in Georgia, okay. Okay, so Sue says the person must first apply through the welfare department, then they get referred. So some places are the gateway, you go in, and then they send you someplace else. Nonprofits that already do rental assistance distribution. And as always, on rental issues and landlord issues, you have your legal services program where people are experts on rental assistance. My first wife worked for Mobilization for Youth Legal Services in New York City, one of the toughest of the legal services programs in the United States. And they perfected the rent strike when landlords didn't do them right. I kind of lost track of rent strikes, whether those work anymore or not, but legal services will know the answer. Okay, rental assistance programs. Oh, National Low Income Housing Coalition organization website has a hot link here to rental assistance. Kamatera, can people download this chat and
we'll be saving the chat and we can post it in free camp with the slides along it, so they'll be able to access all the links and things like that, and the recording of this video. Yes.
okay,
and we do have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, a trend of office buildings being empty as people move from working at home. Yes, New York Times business section has been carrying articles about that. Some programs not requiring Social Security numbers to be provided, others do. There you go. Is there any way to hold states accountable for how they distribute the money? Oh boy. A way to hold okay, so here's the Karen Todd has useful information here. The kids can get the third stimulus payment, but it is not retroactive to the first two. Okay, again, this is big, big, big. A lot of moving parts, some of which we know are how they're going to be implemented. Others are yet to be figured out. Many of them temporary. So you get this tax rebate money, better hang on to a little in case the program does not get extended by Congress past September or past January. And remember, not every federal and state agency are as efficient as each other. Some of them are incredibly efficient and effective. Others, the California Department of Employment Development is taking serious lumps for failure to properly implement unemployment insurance. $2 billion in fraud in California alone, people filing fake claims. Anyhow, thank you all for your attention. Any other questions, ask Kamatera and she'll answer them.
I will find the answer to them all. So thank you so much, Jim, for sharing your knowledge. And I see that there still are some questions in the chat. So I'm going to hold on to those and then I'm going to grill Jim and we're going to get some good answers for you and we'll post it on Free Camp. Thank you so much for attending. And what's coming up next is our networking time. So we're going to hop out of this webinar setting and go to your daily list of email links. And you're going to click on the networking welcome reception speed dating link. And we're going to have a great time to close out the day. Thank you so much, everyone.